Welcome to Popcorn Unscripted, the podcast where we dive into movies and TV shows with no scripts, no filters, just real talk and plenty of popcorn. From timeless classics to the newest releases, it's all about real opinions and unfiltered conversation. I'm your host, Bailey, and let's grab some popcorn, sit back, and let the show begin. She's not just Captain America's girl. She's a one-woman spy show. Welcome to episode 56. So, as you can tell by this intro, we are looking at the first season of Marvel's Agent Carter, which is a very big thing. Well, it's not a big thing, but this show was very, very good back in 2015. I remember when this show came out, because Marvel's Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. was also coming out at the same time, so it was interesting to see this show be something that happened after the first Captain America movie, which is Captain America: The First Avenger. So it is, like I said, it's a 2015 show. It was originally a miniseries, but there was such a demand for this show that they just kept it going, and I want to say it was 3 seasons long. I want to say it was 3 seasons long. It was 8 episodes for the first season. Yeah, it only lasted for 2. It was 2 seasons that it lasted for, unfortunately. But it was a really, really good show, and I'm glad that it got 2 seasons. But unfortunately, it did not. But absolutely loved the cast of this show. Haley Atwell's return as Peggy was absolutely gold. I love her. Like, she does such an amazing job. Like, I don't think anybody else could top the performance that she had as Peggy Carter from not just the first Avenger, but from this show as well. She just did such an amazing job with this character that I just think that it will just, I don't think it will be topped. I'll put it that way. I'm bumbling again. But it also connects to the larger MCU, but it also stands out on its own, because as I said, this happens after the first Avengers, so this happens after the First World War. She is working for the SSR, which is the Strategic Scientific Reserve. This is what S.H.I.E.L.D. was before it was the Strategic Homeland Intervention Enforcement and Logistics Division. So, yeah, it's really, really cool to see this show and see how everything was after Steve was lost to the ice. So as I mentioned, this show is set in 1946, post Captain America: The First Avenger. In this first season, Peggy is working for the SSR, and she is facing intense sexism. Like, she is the only woman working in the office, and she is the only female quote-unquote agent, even though they don't treat her as an agent. She is basically a secretary, is essentially how all of these men treat her. They don't invite her out for a drink, they don't interact with her really. They just give her really mediocre things to do, and she does them anyway because that's what she was told to do, and that's her position. And of course, everybody knows that she was Steve's girl. Everybody knows that, but yet nobody really cares. But when the episode came on where they worked with the Howling Commandos, everybody was just so up in arms. Like, you got to be on the front lines with Captain America. You got to do everything, and but yet Peggy doesn't get that same respect. And that's just harsh. That was just the harsh world of 1946, I guess. And then, of course, you have the main plot of the first season. So Howard Stark is accused of treason, and Peggy works secretly to clear his name throughout the entire first season. And then, of course, you also have the introduction of Leviathan as the shadowy sort of enemy, right? So basically, Leviathan ended up being this sort of like, it's not German, I think it's Russian, German or Russian, one of the two big dogs, one of the two, ended up being one of their, I'm pretty sure it's Russian actually, ended up being, the name of a Russian organization. Leviathan is not a big mystical creature, like one of them said, like the Bible. No, it's not. It's, Leviathan is the name of the organization, that was working on, Lord knows what. And yeah, so it was this season I think is better than the second season, but I just got started watching the second season, so I don't really remember the second season as well. Absolutely love the first season. It's so good. I wish they had kept it going, but really, once you finish season 2, there wasn't really much more story to tell. Anyway, but it was still so good that I wish they had done more with Peggy Carter, which of course they do later on, in Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness. We get, Peggy Carter as she had took the super soldier serum, and she became her other persona that she's known as. I can't remember her superhero name off the top of my head, but she wears the Union Jack on her front, like Captain America wears the stars and stripes for USA, and so it's really cool. And another thing to see too is one of the main things that she and Howard were trying to protect was the last vial of Steve's blood, and like, that's just big in and of itself, that there's only one vial of Steve's blood. Well, there's not one vial left, but there's one, like, untampered with vial of blood left of Steve's. But unfortunately, Leviathan wasn't after Steve's blood. They were after a whole different contraption that was in Howard Stark's vault. And it's still cool. And honestly, I like to watch the guy that plays Howard. I love to watch that guy play Howard. I think he does an absolutely amazing job as Howard Stark. And it's just so cool to see, like, how Howard was in, like, his prime. Like, I would say that's probably his prime era, is that right there. Like, the first Avenger through the First World War and things like that. I would say that's probably part of Howard Stark's prime right there. But of course, we don't. Well, we probably do, but I don't know when he actually met his wife that eventually gave birth to Tony. I actually don't know when, but of course when we see in Endgame, when Tony goes back to the past and he actually gets to meet his father and shake his hand and stuff, we're not really sure how many years it was for that, but Jarvis still looks the same, because they got that guy to play Jarvis again in Endgame too, so it was still really, really cool. But we don't know how old Howard was during Endgame as during that point in time. But I'm just rambling at this point. I love Marvel, if you can't tell. Like, I love Marvel. I love talking about it. I love how everything can connect. Oh, it's because of this thing, and you know, and it's just really funny to me. But yeah. So yeah, Howard is accused of treason. Peggy works to clear his name secretly to clear his name, and then she's also joined by Edwin Jarvis, which is an early connection to future Jarvis that Tony ends up giving his AI the name, and yeah, so, and then yeah. So we're gonna go by episode. There's 8 episodes in this, so I will try to make it each one has its quirk and each one has its importance to the story, which is what a series is supposed to do. But it's interesting how everything unfolds and how everything comes together and how everything happens, and there's so much character development here that it's amazing. So, we have the first episode, which is called Now Is Not the End. So, basically, it sets the tone, it talks about Peggy's double life, and you also have the diner scene. I think it's the diner scene, or the dinner, I think it's diner scene. But you have the first episode. So Peggy Carter returns to the SSR in 1946. She is currently in New York. She's dealing with post-war sexism and the apparent death of Steve Rogers. So she's grieving, still trying to grieve through this, which I don't know how much time had passed since the ending of the World War. I don't know how many months had passed since then, but there are still some soldiers still on the front lines during this time as well. So I'm not exactly sure, like, time-wise, how much further this is ahead after losing Steve Rogers. But she secretly takes on the mission to clear her friend Howard Stark's name after he's framed for weapons theft. Now, what initially happened, and this is how Howard explains, like, something happened, somebody had broken into my vault and stole all of my big bad toys, is essentially what he says to Peggy. And, and she's trying to go through this office thing, she's trying to, she's just trying to get over Steve, she's just trying to, grieve and heal, and then she has this whole office full of men that just attack her and berate her and just, bring her down every chance they get, and, and they keep her sheltered, keep her protected, which is what a man is supposed to do for his wife, by the way, or any woman. Like, man is supposed to protect woman, right? That's what, anyway, but, yeah. It's valid, but at the same time, she can clearly take care of herself if she fought alongside Captain America in the First World War. It's, yeah. If that were to have happened, then, why not let the lady try a little bit, But essentially, that episode's the basis. It shows, it introduces the main plot, which is her trying to clear Howard Stark's name. And then, of course, there at the end of the episode, I'm pretty sure it's the end of the episode, we see her roommate get killed, unfortunately, by a member of Leviathan. Which, of course, we don't know that then. We just know that his voice box that he has this little cut on his neck where he should have been able to talk, but there's no sound coming out. And so we get to see one of the bad guys from Leviathan and stuff. So it kind of just sets up everything for the next season, or not next season, but the next episode and everything like that. So the next episode is Bridge and Tunnel. So Peggy continues her undercover work at the SSR while helping Stark evade capture, and she begins uncovering the larger conspiracy around the stolen tech. So she starts to find her way. She starts to figure out where some of the weapons have gone, like where things are being sold and things like that. I think this is the episode where she actually goes to a nightclub and she finds one of the weapons and things, and she has to deactivate the bomb and things like that. So that was probably like the most heightened thing, is that she had to defuse that grenade thing that Stark had invented. Which that was the big thing for that one. Is that she ended up finding that and defusing it and things like that. And also, she gets a new best friend that worked at the same diner. And, of course, with Peggy, she has a guilty conscience at this point because her friend had just gotten killed. And so it's just, guilty. She just feels... honestly, if I were her, I would feel so lost. But she's not lost to the point where she's not able to do her job effectively. And that's pretty much the basis of the second one. It's not as climactic as the first episode, but the second episode does move it along, and you do get some character development, I believe. You're also introduced to Peggy's new friend that also works at the same diner and also calls her English, just like the previous one, and things like that. So, and then you have the third episode, which is Time and Tide. So, the plot deepens with this episode. So, Peggy pursues leads, the SSR shifts focus, and the mystery of stolen tech intensifies. If I remember this episode, this is the episode where she actually discovers who stole the weapons and things like that, and she confronts him, and she gets the actual symbol of Leviathan. She gets the symbol, the heart with the squiggly through it. Why that was the symbol, I have no idea. But they discovered, like what? No. Yeah, they did discover who it was, but it wasn't that episode, where she actually found the guy with the truck of the grenades, but she figured out what happened. So at the end of that episode, and this is where Roxxon actually comes in. Like, Roxxon is in this series, but we actually don't see Roxxon in the greater MCUs as a whole, which is interesting, because we do see Roxxon in the Marvel Spider-Man games. But I digress. But with the grenade, one of the guy had threw it. He was also with Leviathan, and so what ended up happening? So the guy threw it, and he's like, "You have 30 seconds to live," and so they didn't know what was going to happen. So essentially, you could say that was a test. So essentially, what happened is the grenade goes off. It literally imploded the entire thing. It was, think of it like the sun device from the second Tobey Maguire movie that Dr. Otto Octavius had made. Think of it like that, but it's like compacted and is instantaneous and does die out fairly quickly, but it just leaves like a ginormous ball of mess of like metal and ceramic and and concrete, and all of it's just imploded into that little ball. It's just, it was a very crazy episode, to say the least. And then we go to the fourth episode, the Blitzerking Button. The Blitzerking Button. I think that's how you say that. Blitzerking Button. So Peggy must protect Stark and retrieve a dangerous device called the Blitzerking Button, revealing deeper secrets, including connection to Captain America's blood. So this is the first time we see Howard Stark since the first episode. This is the first time Howard comes back to Peggy, and he tells her there's one device that the SSR has that you need to steal back. And that was the device that held Captain America's blood that I had mentioned about earlier. So unfortunately, what Howard does is he lies to Peggy and say, like, this button can wipe out an entire city block of power. Like, this can take out the power grid. Like, that's how powerful this is. It's like nuclear bomb almost, but it's more tame than that. And so she does so, and of course she runs the risk of actually pressing open the thing and discovering that Captain America's blood in it, which throws a wrench in her and Howard's relationship because he lied to her, and stuff. So we learn the truth, and we think that Steve Rogers, and it's at this point that we're like, okay, so this is what Leviathan is after, is Steve Rogers' blood. Well, unfortunately, that's not the case, as we get into episode 5, which is called The Iron Ceiling. So Peggy is finally cleared for field duty and goes on a mission with the Howling Commandos. The origins of the Black Widow program begin to surface. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. This is the start of the Black Widow program. And it's crazy to think about, because Natasha and her sister Yelena didn't get into this program until like maybe 20 years later. And so it's crazy to think that this is what the Black Widow program was before it was the Black Widow program we know and are aware of through Black Widow and Yelena. So essentially, Peggy Carter's facing a Black Widow, and like it's just nuts. It's nuts how all of this comes together and how it's all connected to the greater MCU. It's just so cool. So she goes on an actual field mission with the Howling Commandos. So the Howling Commandos make an appearance in this show, which is absolutely incredible because I love the Howling Commandos, especially Dum Dum Dugan. He's probably my favorite Howling Commando, just because he's funny. I like him a lot. And essentially, this is the episode where Peggy actually shows her full potential. Because she does have, what's his name? Has what's his name with him, with her, and she's like, oh, well, he's the leader. But the Howling Commandos are like, Peggy, we're only gonna do what you say. Like, we're not gonna listen to this Joker. Like, we're not gonna listen to this guy. We're only gonna listen to you. And so, this is essentially what happens. And so they go on this mission, and they ended up finding this psychiatric doctor, who's actually very messed up, very, very messed up. And which, of course, he seems like harmless and things at first. But Jack, that's his name, Jack. But yeah, it was throughout this episode. It gives some throughout this episode. It gives some character to Jack as well. It kind of character builds him a little bit. We figure out a little bit of his backstory and why he is the way he is, and what he holds on his shoulders and such. And yeah, it's pretty great. It's pretty great. But unfortunately, we lose one Howling Commando. It was a young guy. We see him die because there was a little girl that was still there on the premises. But ultimately, she was not very nice. She was not nice at all. So yeah, and then ultimately, by the end of the episode, they end up taking that doctor back to the United States and to the SSR because he had told them that he was willing to help assist in any way that he could, which was a very good in for him. Alright, and on to episode 6, A Sin to Err. And so in this episode, Peggy and Jarvis hunt a suspected female operative. Peggy is framed and must fight for her reputation while uncovering more of the Leviathan plot. This is not the episode, I don't think. I want to say this is the episode, where Peggy gets framed for everything because as the season goes on, there are tracks that Peggy and Jarvis end up leaving. Like, for example, in the episode where Roxxon implodes, the bumper of the car with the plate on it ended up getting caught into the big ball. And one of the agents ended up finding that bumper and running the plate that was still attached to it. And it came back as Howard Starks, and so they go and question Jarvis in that episode, which of course but Jarvis has a good poker face when he wants to have one. But yeah, it's yeah, and so ultimately Peggy ends up getting framed for murdering Agent Krasinski that ends up dying by Leviathan. But, of course, during this episode, Peggy ends up finding out that one of her neighbors in the building that she's living in is a female operative and is trying to, which, of course, she doesn't know quite yet that she's working with Leviathan, but her being a female operative and such is a big dead giveaway. And so they end up finding out that the doctor is actually no good, and he's also a famous hypnotist from the war. And so he was able to get a hold of not the director. I don't think it's called the director, but that's what I'm going to use. But he ends up getting the guy in charge and ends up killing him with an exploding vest that was designed to keep soldiers warm during like the cold and things like that, but it was not very good and ended up killing him. So yeah, that was a big. I think that one's probably my most favorite episode, is that episode, because of how chaotic it is and how much pressure is put on Peggy to try and make things right and fix everything, and yeah. And so I think it's the best episode of the season by far, in my opinion. And then you move on to episode 7, which is Snafu. So Peggy's deception comes to light at the SSR. Jarvis brings a fake confession for Stark. A major betrayal is revealed, and the stakes skyrocket. Actually, no, it's this episode where he ends up dying. I was talking about the wrong freaking episode, but yeah, I digress. No, it's the last episode we discover that she's a female operative, that the neighbor is a female operative, and she's trying to work against Peggy. We as the audience learn that. Peggy does not learn that, but we as an audience learn about her stuff. So, but yeah, it's during this second to last episode that a fake confession is brought by Jarvis to get Peggy out of the mess that she's in. Actually, no, it was last episode. No, it was last episode where, where she's revealed as a female operative and she gets taken in by the SSR for questioning and yeah. Okay, I'm remembering now. But anyway, I digress. So it's this episode where the doctor ends up getting in the head of the director and makes him do things that he doesn't want to do, and locks Jarvis and Peggy up, and they try to break their way out, and it's just these two episodes, 6 and 7, are very big episodes for this season. It's like these are the two episodes that is like the big climax for this season, and it's an amazing, like, I can't tell you like how good this season was because of those two episodes. But I digress. Valediction. So this is the season finale. This is episode 8. Peggy and her allies make their move, confront the threat, and fallout leaves new beginnings, yet many loose ends remain. So it is in this final episode that Howard comes back, and the doctor and the female operative is out there. They go and test the gas that was received from him last episode, that they received from the director that he ended up hypnotizing, and yeah, it's a whole thing. It's yeah. So train of thought. So yeah, at the end of last episode, he ends up getting like this big case that had a bunch of canisters in it. We didn't know what was in the canisters. We thought that Leviathan was coming after Steve's blood, but ultimately that's not what the case. Because when they go check the lab later, the blood is still there. So that's not what they took. They took the thing called Item 17, and essentially it's this gas that makes you attack other people and kill them. Like, it really, I guess it overpowers your senses. But essentially the basis of what the invention was supposed to do, it was supposed to help soldiers stay awake longer. But ultimately he's like, it develops psychosis and among other things. Psychosis being the biggest thing about the gas. So it sends them on like a psychotic rage. Almost, pretty much a psychotic rage is essentially what it does. And so at the beginning of the next episode, Sousa and Jack and Peggy end up going into this theater and seeing the aftermath of the gas. Sousa ends up getting sprayed with the gas because he ends up finding the canister, ends up trying to kill Jack. He gets cuffed to a bed, and it's a big thing. So Howard comes back and he's like, oh, well, or actually, no, that was last episode. He does come back and ends up doing they do a thing, and then that's how, yeah. That makes sense. Or no, it was the finale. Was it the finale? I'm getting my episodes mixed up, guys. I'm so sorry. But it's all the same story, essentially. But yeah, the last episode is just an emotional closer, and it made room for more stories to come, and it did, because we ended up getting a second season. All right. So, enough about the story that I keep getting mixed up, what happens in what episodes. Let's go into our character deep dive. So, Peggy Carter, she has her strength, she's grieving, she has wit, but she also has a moral center. She is bound and determined to help Howard because that is one of her greatest friends, and one of her greatest allies is Howard Stark. And it's just a big deal for her, because she's dealing with losing Steve. She was dealing and grieving with that, this season shows that she's more than that. She's more than just Steve's woman. She's more than just Steve's girl. She's way more than anybody could have ever hoped her to be. And this season showed what Peggy Carter is capable of and what she can be capable of. And it's a great thing for her. And then, of course, you have Jarvis, who is, for one, a comic relief with depth, of course. We do learn a little bit about Jarvis and who he is and what he does and things like that, and what has happened to him over his lifetime, and why his wife is here, and it's a whole thing. It's a whole thing. So, yeah, and then you also have his growing trust with Peggy. You can see their relationship, you could see them bond almost instantly, and you could see that relationship flourish, which is absolutely amazing. And then, of course, you have the messy, charming, but layered Howard Stark, which, of course, we learned about in the first Avenger. We know all about Howard. We know Tony is a lot like Howard, in the sense of him being charming and layered. But Howard is, he's smart, but he's not smart. You know what I'm saying? He's smart, but he's not smart. So I guess that's what makes him messy, in a sense. But yeah, this first season really fleshed these characters out, and we got to see all of that play out, and I'm happy that it did. And then, of course, you have the SSR agents. You have Sousa and Thompson, and their growth and conflicts, along with Peggy and Howard and Jarvis. You see who these guys are and what makes them tick, and what they can do, and who these guys are, essentially. And then you have the other female characters as more than just support. Then you have Angie and Dottie, which Dottie ends up being the female operative that we learn later. But all of these characters, I love how fleshed out they were through this first season. It brought a lot to the story of Peggy Carter and what happened after the crash of Captain America, and what happened after all of that kind of stuff. So we'll get into themes and tonal shifts. So it's a post-war identity in this first season, and sexism in the workplace, what they did back to women back then. Back when women could work, but men were still not they weren't still really happy about the idea of women working, and women having these sort of rights and stuff. But then again, Peggy's English. She really already had these rights back in England, as far as I'm concerned. I could be totally wrong about that. Let me know. But yeah, it's just a whole thing, and it kind of sucks watching it, because especially watching it now, because it's like this Peggy was just treated like crap. Like, she was just sent to do errands and sent to do things that, is just yeah. She was just a puppet for the SSR at that point. And so, yeah, and then of course you have the themes of trust and betrayal throughout this first season, and you see it a lot throughout these episodes. You do trust and betrayal. You had the betrayal of Howard, him lying to Peggy, and then you have this betrayal with Jarvis and Peggy. Like, Peggy's like, I thought I could trust you, and he was like, you can, and it's a bit messed up what Howard did to Peggy, not filling her in completely, and then of course she already feels, and then there's the big trust and betrayal when everything comes out that she was being a double agent the entire time to her team. She was being a double agent the entire time, and it was just heart-wrenching watching that again. And then you also have found family and loyalty throughout this. Peggy remained loyal to Howard despite him lying to her. She kept her promise to him and ended up clearing his name and ended up being a really good asset. And then of course you have the legacy of Captain America and how Peggy honors that legacy. Like, she still keeps in touch with the Howling Commandos, for crying out loud. Like, she's still so tapped into the war, and like none of the SSR guys seems to really care about her, and you see that throughout this. Is like, nobody really cares, but they don't want her hurt either. It's a bit messed up in my book. So, what works versus what doesn't? So, what works? The style, the music, and the period details, like, are really, really strong. And then you have the strong central performances. You have the performances of Haley Atwell and the guy that plays Jarvis and the guy that plays Howard, as well as the agents. And then, of course, it's a balanced sort of tone, so you have fun spy stuff with real emotions and stakes. So, yeah, I mean, everything worked for me. I don't think the plot lines felt rushed or underbaked or anything. I think it all... Now, do I wish it was 2 episodes longer? Yeah, but, I mean, back then, in 2015, if you were going to do a miniseries, it was supposed to be just one miniseries, so, I keep that in mind, too. But, I do think it needed more episodes to flesh out what Leviathan was, because I think there was some misinformation throughout the first season that we didn't get. I think there was some information that we just didn't get, and Leviathan's not entirely understood. We do get some flashback scenes in the episode where it's about the female operative. But other than that, Leviathan wasn't very fleshed out as a villain. Really, the Doctor was the villain along with the female operative, so, I mean, yeah, it's not the entire best, but, I mean, if you think about it, it's supposed to be a mini-series that they were shooting for. They didn't think they were going to do a second season. So, yeah. So, getting into final thoughts and questions for you guys. Why Agent Carter deserved more seasons. I think more could have been done for her. Because you have to think, this was all after the First World War. I would want to see what Peggy goes through when the Second World War comes. Or even the Cold War, too. Like, I want to see what happens when the Second War comes and how the SSR, handles that and what happens during the Second World War. Like, is Peggy retired by then? Like, we just don't know, and I would have liked to have known. Because I'm sure there's other, like, stuff that happened, after all of that, could have been told, what stories could have been told. But yeah. This show also had a bunch of MCU tie-ins without having to have a superhero tied into it. Like, this show connects to the greater MCU because it's Peggy Carter and because she was in Captain America. Like, she's Captain America's girl. So, it's just really, really cool to see a show that doesn't exactly have a superhero in it and it still be connected to the larger universe. So here are some questions for you guys. Did you watch Agent Carter when it aired? I know I did back in 2015. And would you like to see Peggy Carter return in more stories, whether it be another series or whether it be another movie? Just let me know, and yeah. That's a wrap on today's episode of Popcorn Unscripted. Don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe wherever you get your podcast. New episodes drop every Monday and Friday, so be sure to tune in. Until next time, keep your popcorn close and your movie critiques closer. Thanks for listening to Popcorn Unscripted.